itanong talaga yung total details ng rollout. Ang napag-usapan lamang ay yung tungkol sa number one, that we have enough funds to cover the needs for the vaccines. Number two, yung computation ng Department of Finance kung ilang mga bakuna. By averaging out the cost per vaccine times how many doses, then the number of Filipinos that we need to inoculate. At nakita nga po doon na kung ano yung magiging kumbaga sagot ng national government plus yung initiatives ng private sector pati ang LGUs. So we're confident to be able to cover that many Filipinos, and that's enough for herd immunity. At siguro ang pinaka-essence ng report ng Department of Finance is number one, that we have enough funds. Number two, we have enough funds for enough number of Filipinos to be covered, excluding yung mga underage. No? So, napag-usapan kagabi, kung 18 years old ba and below, or 16 years old and below, ang hindi na kailangan magpabakuna, kasi unahin natin for herd immunity yung above 18 or above 16. So, really depends on the vaccine brand. Some vaccine brands say that pwede yung 16 and below, yung iba sinasabi it's 18 and below. So, depending sa vaccine brand, no? But ang essence, ang pinaka-essence, ang bottom line natin is that we have enough funds and we have enough to cover for herd immunity in the Philippines. And full trust and confidence sa team ni Secretary Galvez to be able to acquire enough vaccines for this national effort.
Sir, dito po sa yung nabanggit niyo pong rising case ng online pornography among involving children, ano po yung naging initial na reaction dito ng Pangulo? And what will be his orders? Kumbaga magkakaroon ba tayo ng, are we expecting crackdowns and initial information, sir? Is there a syndicate behind this, or kumbaga individual, kumbaga per family ba ito nangyayari?
Well, first things first, I think the real message is for the ISPs natin, our internet service providers. You must be reminded, and you are duly reminded right now, of your obligations under Republic Act 9775. And Republic Act 9775 is actually our Anti-Child Pornography Act of 2009. So ibig sabihin, since 2009, dapat duly noted na ninyo ang obligations ng ating mga internet service providers, which by the way, includes putting up the technology to block any child pornography sites happening using your internet service. And might I remind you that in this Section 15 of the said Republic Act, any ISP found guilty of willfully and knowingly failing to comply with the notice and installation requirements under Section 9, installation of technology that will block child pornography here in the country, will suffer the penalty of fine of 500,000 to 1 million pesos for your first offense. And in case of a subsequent offense, the penalty shall be a fine of not less than 1 million to 2 million pesos plus revocation of your license to operate. If you want to stamp out child pornography in the country, I think we have to start with our ISPs. So ISPs, you are hereby duly served with notice of your obligations under Republic Act 9775. And the NTC is hereby instructed to do your duty as far as any violations are concerned, NTC being a part of the Interagency Council against child pornography.
Do we have a deadline for this, sir?
Well, ASAP, immediately.
Mm-hmm. Sir, maybe last from me, no? Napag-usapan po kaya kagabi sa cabinet meeting yung issue ng pagkakautang ng PhilHealth, not just to Red Cross, no, but to other private hospitals as well.
Well, not this cabinet meeting. This was discussed in the previous cabinet meeting. And napag-usapan naman dun sa previous cabinet meeting the duties of PhilHealth in paying its obligations. And report naman ng PhilHealth na there are procedural aspects to this, no? Kailangan rin po kasi natin makita na hindi naman pwede basta-basta magbayad ang PhilHealth, no? Pera din ng taong bayang 'yan. So, kailangan mag-comply muna ang mga laboratory sa lahat ng mga procedural requirements. At ang promise naman ng PhilHealth ay hindi naman sila magkukulang sa pagbayad basta dumaan lang sa tamang proseso at procedure. Kasi the last thing that we wanna happen is PhilHealth paying without following the proper procedure. But yung assurance po ng PhilHealth ay babayaran naman yung kailangan bayaran.
Pero sir, as of now, wala pa silang target date as to when they will comply with their, or when they will settle with their dues. Kasi I think marami pong nagrereklamo ngayon na private hospitals that they're having a hard time with their operations with the debts of PhilHealth.
Yes, basta makakomply lang naman sila sa procedures. Anyway, if there is any untoward delays in the claims or the payment of the claims, pwede naman agad sila makipag-ugnayan sa aming tanggapan sa 8888 hotline or other avenues where they can voice out their complaint, and we will act accordingly.
Thank you, Secretary.
Salamat din po.
Thank you, Trish Tarada of CNN Philippines. We have phone-in questions from Ms. Tina Mendez of the Philippine Star. First question, how prepared is the government in terms of storage and rollout of the vaccines once the supply arrives the country? Pfizer, for instance, needs to be stored in below zero temperature.
Ang alam ko, ang pagkakaintindi ko kasi itong mga pharmaceutical companies, when they come in and enter into contracts with us, we have naman the ability or pwede naman nating ibigay yung mga responsibilities and obligations na yan sa mga pharma companies, including yung proper distribution. No? So that's also part and parcel of the rollout of the vaccine. Of course, kung kinakailangan ng support from the government, nandyan naman po yung suporta na maibibigay ng gobyerno. No? Plus, of course, the private sector efforts also. But obviously, it is something that we are monitoring kasi naman po, importante hindi lamang yung pagdating ng bakuna dito, kundi yung proper storage, pati yung proper transportation. No? So some of the pharmaceutical companies have their own distribution channels and outlets. And depending on what comes out during the negotiations na ginagawa ni Secretary Charlie and his team with the different pharma companies. No? So hindi lamang yung pag-acquire ng bakuna, but even yung storage may form part and parcel of the negotiations in terms of the obligations din ng pharma companies. Because at the last, ang ayaw rin ng pharma company, di ba? Hindi rin gusto ng pharma company na magdala sila ng mga bakuna dito pero hindi rin sila prepared sa mga storage obligations nila because masisira din yung kumbaga yung bakuna at masisira din yung pangalan ng mga pharma companies. So kasama yan sa mga negotiations na pinag-uusapan ngayon.
Second question from Ms. Tina Mendez of Philippine Star. How are we preparing our nurses or medical workers who would administer the vaccines?
Yes, that's part and parcel of the plans being rolled out by the vaccine team. Syempre, alam naman po natin na kasama yung Department of Health dyan. We also have had vaccination programs na nationwide. So, kumbaga meron na po tayong template in terms of the vaccination program. But all we need to do is to use the template and tailor fit it to the needs of specifically for the COVID-19 vaccine. And when I say tailor fit it, kasi remember, we need 2 doses. Karamihan sa mga brands need 2 doses. So we'll have to tailor fit the rollout using the usual template natin na vaccination program. That being said, meron din po tayong unique rollout in terms of this vaccination program for COVID-19 kasi Kung natatandaan nyo yung mga briefings ni Secretary Galvez at ng DOH, we will go region by region. We've already identified the regions by priority, and then we will go by sectoral vaccination. So per region, may sectors po na unahin natin. Of course, the medical frontliners because they're the most exposed. So we'll start with NCR, and then we will go down to the other regions like CAR, Region 3, Region 4A, Region 3, Central Visayas, Davao Region, and then all the way until maubos natin ang lahat ng regions, and then lahat ng medical frontliners na na-register natin, and then we go to the next sector na naman po, which is the senior citizens, etc., and so on and so forth. So yun po yung medyo unique lang dito sa rollout ng vaccines na to, but otherwise we shall be using the template na ginagawa ng DOH pagdating sa immunization program.
Thank you, Kabsec. Next question will come from Sam Medanilia of Business Mirror. Ang tanong niya po, Sec, ay na-identify po kaya sa cabinet meeting kagabi kung anong ISP ang isa-sanction due to allowing child pornography in their platforms?
Hindi specifically na-identify, but we're giving notice and putting them at notice right now. And the NTC is hereby already notified to already do your duty. And so, fair warnings to all ISP. Might I remind you, 2009 pa itong batas na ito.
Second question from Sam. Ano din po kaya ang i-impose na penalty ng NTC against these firms?
Ay, nandiyan na po. Nabasa ko na po based on the Republic Act. The first offense is a fine of 500,000 to 1 million pesos, and the second and succeeding offenses is 1 million to 2 million plus revocation of license.
Thank you, Sec. Okay, our next live QA question will come from Joseph Morong of GMA 7. Joseph?
Sir, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Joseph.
Sir, I'd like to ask you about the vaccination program of the government. No? You mentioned na yung 75 billion is now only for 57 million recipients, and the other 13 million will be covered by the LGU. But we thought in the beginning, when they were budgeting this vaccine budget, it was the 75 million was already for 60 to 70 million Filipinos, but nag-isip 57 na lang.
Kasi yung pag-compute ng DOF was just for illustration purposes kay Pangulo, just to assure the President that we have enough to cover. Kasi syempre, it will really depend on the vaccine that is available, the vaccines that will come into the country, and the cost. The cost is not equal. So, ang rough computation or illustration na ginawa lang ng Department of Finance is based on an average cost ng lahat ng vaccines na we expect to be rolled out in the Philippines. So, kumbaga, it's not an exact mathematical computation. It is just an illustration na kaya natin makover yung dapat natin na makover for herd immunity to happen. Siguro when I say herd immunity, ang makover natin would be those lang underage ang hindi naman kailangan natin pabakunahan. But ang computation lang was based on how many Filipinos, then compute how many Filipinos in total minus the number of estimated Filipinos who are 16 to 18 years old and below. And then we had, then na-compute na yung estimated number, and then magkano yung average cost, and then so on and so forth to get to that. So it's not an exact mathematical computation kasi hindi rin natin alam kasi kung ano yung hindi natin exactly alam kung ano yung mga vaccines na darating. Kasi lahat yan mag-EUA application pa. Lahat po yan may nagki-clinical trial pa, etc., etc. And all of them have different costs. So it's just an illustration.
So where did you get the 57 million?
So ang ginawa, I don't have the calculations here, no, but ang ginawa is sabihin natin ang average cost is ganito, and then sabihin natin ganito karami ang kinakailangan na mabakunahan, ganito karami ang makover ng LGU. So ang naiwan is ganito, and then ganito yung computation na average per average for the 2 doses per patient.
So mukhang survey natin yun na talaga at umasa na dun sa LGU number. Kasi before, when the cabinet is discussing itong vaccination, 70 million covered by the 75 billion. But now you have the LGUs. So pinactorin nyo na rin yung capability ng LGUs. You gave some of the recipients to the LGUs, correct?
I guess we're factoring in the LGUs because syempre we have to adapt also to what is happening on the ground. At the first instance siguro when the pronouncements were made, hindi pa natin alam kung how aggressive the LGUs will be in terms of seeking out to do their own initiatives for vaccination. Now that we're getting a lot of more aggressiveness sa mga LGUs in terms of their commitment to also initiate their own acquisition of the vaccines for the respective localities, then the DOF was able to factor that in already in their rough computation. So ibig po sabihin, dati hindi pa natin alam kung ganun ba ka-aggressive ang mga LGUs. Now, it seems like the trend is marami na sa mga LGUs ang nagko-commit na at marami na rin mga private sector companies ang nagko-commit na rin. So whatever, siguro ang bottom line na lang natin, Joseph, is whatever the cost, the national government will make sure that we have the budget kung kailangan pa nating dagdagan. Kasi remember, we also have to remember na dun sa budget po, yung pag-fill up ng unprogrammed funds na yan might entail for us to borrow, di ba? So, and because of the procurement challenges, we might have to use the borrowing facility in order for us to procure. So in any case, kung sasaluin naman ng iba't ibang mga LGUs at iba't ibang mga private sector companies, ang bottom line in the end, it's just how much do we need to really borrow in order for us to finance the vaccination program, depending on the costs and availability of the vaccines. Ang bottom line siguro, Joseph, is rest assured the national government will do its part, no, and make sure that we have enough vaccines for herd immunity.
There's a budgeting lang. I'm sure meron na kayong... How do you budget the money pala? Yun na lang yung question. How do you budget the money? Because obviously, hindi kayo pwede mong hula lang ng costing. No? Halimbawa, itong 75, let's just assume this is the cost. Because the vaccines have their cost now. No?
Yes.
They have their prices.
So,
and how did you divide the 75 million and to what vaccine manufacturer?
So, syempre, it will depend also on which vaccine manufacturers will apply for EUA, emergency use application dito. Then, it also depends on how far along yung ating negotiations with the other pharma companies, how successful they will be, and how fast and immediate. Some might, in fact, overtake others. So, baka may mauna pa. May ibang mahuhuli, and then those have different costs, diba? But ang importante lang dito, Joseph, is number one, na-identify na po natin kung sino yung ating ang bilang na mga magiging beneficiaries ng vaccination program.